You're listening to NT Paranormal After Dark. Nothing normal about it.
Hey everybody, what's up? So we have been doing a bunch of really cool stuff with the new Facebook API. Basically re-releasing a lot of our older videos all day. They have this new thing where it's called like a premiere, and then we can all watch it together and comment. So a lot of you guys are coming back because we've been doing that all day. We're thinking about doing that as a pre-show for this show to kind of get almost like a lobby to get you guys ready for the discussions. So we were supposed to have Rose Domain in today, and she was going to do the free readings for everybody, but unfortunately she's sick today. She can't make it out. She was going to try to video in, and she's just not feeling good enough to do that. So we rescheduled her show for to be determined. And me and Sarah we went to one of our backup topics today, which we're going to talk about.
I am on the show. You just can't see me.
Yeah, you're screwing up our whole intro, Kat. Jeez. Oh, man. You'd think you'd watch enough episodes, you know what the hell's going on by now.
Well, we just got an interesting comment on our Facebook over the last video about paranormal investigators coming up short. Has anyone ever got a clear as day image of a ghost or absolute proof of the afterlife? I was like, no, dude, that's
if
not a thing.
If there was absolute proof, then, there wouldn't have to be like the whole investigation thing. They'd just be like,
my response might have been a little curt.
Maybe. I don't know. There was that dude that was in the...
He's going to watch this. He asked if this was live, and he'd be back, but he's...
Oh, so this is worth his time, I guess?
Shush.
Oh, my God.
People like live content, apparently.
I like live content, too, but that was a rude comment.
Hey,
What's the point?
I don't think he meant it to be rude. I think he was just... It's Facebook. It always comes across as rude.
I don't know. I hate the internet now. You're bad? Yeah, you're bad, Kat. Definitely you're bad. You're ruining the entire show.
Watch as Brad chases off all of our viewers one by one.
I can do it. I can definitely do it. So, I guess what me and Sarah kind of talked about earlier is, okay, so Rose isn't coming in. What are we going to talk about? And then she brought up a good idea. She said, what about the topic on why kids seem to be more susceptible to paranormal, or why do they seem to notice
Yeah.
Why do they notice paranormal activity more? Because if you talk to a lot of people out there, whether they're investigators or not, they'll tell you that animals and children are more susceptible to the paranormal. But I don't think I have, and I don't think I've heard anybody else ask why. Why would they be more susceptible to the paranormal?
I've considered it.
And I understand the flip side of that coin. I can understand why they might mistake things as paranormal easier than adult, because they don't have that understanding there. But the flip side of that coin would be, okay, so if they are more susceptible to the paranormal, why would that even be? Right? Mm. So, I mean, I think it's a good topic. It brings up a really good question, especially you have kids. Mm-hmm. So in your experience with your two children, we've lightly brushed on it, in past side discussions, but I guess that'll kind of be part of the main discussion. But like, what has happened in your own personal experience with your children and experience in paranormal stuff? I know Caitlin's really into our show and all that.
Most of it involves Caitlin, who is 12 now, but most of this stuff happened before I ever knew you. Back when they were really, when Caitlin was really little, before Andrew was even born, because he's 5 years younger. He's only 7.
Right. And you said Caitlin, like the first, when we were kind of like just briefly talking about it, you said Caitlin's first kind of sort of moment that came to mind was actually just as she was becoming aware and like able to communicate. Like she couldn't even communicate.
Well, because
in full sentences yet, right?
They actually that's one of the things is they tested her for autism when she was 2 because she was nonverbal. So she was a really late talker, and they decided she didn't have that she was just not wanting to talk. It just wasn't clicking with her for some reason. Everything else was on par. It's just she didn't communicate.
I was wondering why everything was blurry. I was like, I can't read the comments.
And now she won't shut up, so obviously she sorted it.
Yeah, it wasn't the vaccines, at least, right?
Oh my God. Let's not go down that avenue.
What? Why not?
Of course it wasn't the vaccines.
Oh, okay. So what was it? So what was that first thing
the first thing was, and I have to add a disclaimer, I watched paranormal, like horror movies really young. I was probably allowed to watch movies I shouldn't have been watching. And I grew up...
Yeah, definitely guilty.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I write the things that I write.
And I grew up scared all the time. Like, I had a really hard time being alone, being in the dark, sleeping in my room. So when we had Caitlin, I was only 20, we were going to not let her watch TV.
Okay.
And certainly not horror movies. The no TV thing lasted until she was about we started letting her watch
until the screaming
cartoons.
started.
Yeah, until the screaming started, and I was like, "Here, TV will babysit."
This will raise you.
And but the horror movies, actually, I didn't start letting her watch until she was quite a bit older.
Yeah, I mean, I was around by the time.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I had asked if you know, because I hang out with your kids because I'm a big kid. I mean, my room's filled with comic book stuff, so I hang out with your children.
Really?
And and I babysit sometimes because I'm that person. But I would have to ask them, like, is this okay for them to watch or whatever? And I was always surprised because, like, I've known you a while, and you don't seem like, well, just on the outset, you don't seem like the kind of person that would even monitor what their kid watches, much less, like, really, like, because it's weird, because some stuff you'll say, like, even now, because she's preteen, but even now you're like, this is okay, but this isn't because of this specific content. Because I really like your views on, like, how you decide that, because, well, you got in that debate.
Yeah, that was a whole big debate I had in a mom group where they were talking about letting their kids watch The Walking Dead. And which is super violent.
Well,
and I
gory.
had said, well, if I was going to, first off, I tried to let my kids watch The Walking Dead because I didn't think they'd like it. And sure enough, halfway through the first episode, they were both bored to tears and they left.
Right.
They said they would not let their kids watch it because of the sex scenes. And I said, really, in Walking Dead, the sex, the things that your kids are probably going to experience in life.
Yeah, actually, like if you put it on a scale, eventually your kids are probably going to have sex at some point in their life, but they might not necessarily shoot somebody in the face.
And I was like, yet the violence is not something you're worried about at all. And I don't think that violence makes kids more violent. I just think before a certain age, it's probably not good to just...
Violence in media doesn't make kids more violent.
No, I just don't think it's good to just fill your mind with that.
Right.
It wasn't good for me. But, and then they said, oh, you'd rather watch your kid, let your kid watch porn than someone getting punched in the face. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I said.
Right. We equate The Walking Dead to porn. Yeah.
I was like, the sex scenes in that are pretty, it's cable TV.
I can kind of see the flip side. A little bit of the argument is that because of the way sex is portrayed on TV, I don't necessarily think it's super good or super healthy.
Yeah.
But no one ever censored what I watched. I watched ghost shows. I was
banned from anything involving any sex scene, but I could watch someone getting hacked to bits by a machete, and to me, that never made sense.
Well, none of that stuff was banned to me, but there was a discussion. And
that's what I do with my kids. If they're going to watch something like that, I want to know what they're watching, and we have to talk about it because of the way media portrays sex.
I mean, you just now let Steven and Andrew, and actually me too, watch Deadpool.
It was the second Deadpool.
Yeah, and that is totally not appropriate for his age level. But he understands because we talked. He knows that behavior is not okay. Yeah. He understands that the things they're saying are not okay to repeat. And he doesn't understand half the jokes in it. Well, and my kids
grew up with Allie living in our house. Steven used to have to wash her mouth out with soap. Right. So their languages. But the point was that Caitlin had not been watching violent movies.
Right. However, up to this point, you were still being a good parent.
Yeah, up until this point.
Okay.
This is when it all broke down, because I was like, well, if she's going to see this shit, why should I be avoiding this anyway?
Right.
And we were living in the house I'm living in now, and we were living in the upstairs room where Kristen and Aaron lived. So it opens out over our garage room. So it's on the whatever, it doesn't matter. and across the hall, Caitlin's nursery was. And she had been, me and Allie would sit and listen to her on the baby monitor. You know, she would have conversations. And that's pretty normal for a kid. Kids talk to themselves. Kids have imaginary friends. It was mostly gibberish anyway. But she had come in my room one night, and she was obviously bothered. She said, there's a headless man in my room putting blood and fire on my walls. And I went, well, then how about you sleep in my room? Because that's not normal. Now, we'd already had some signs that maybe she wasn't neurotypical.
Right.
And she isn't.
In meaning neurotypical, I mean, it could autism or
she's ADHD for sure.
Right.
And they think she might be on the spectrum. So,
which it turns out more of us are than what was previously thought.
Pretty sure all millennials are on the spectrum.
Yeah, I mean by today's standards, I'm on the spectrum because I've got I'm not OCD, but I've got a lot of the symptoms of OCD, which is on the spectrum of autism. And you're more OCD than I am. In a different way.
I'm medicated for OCD. It's so bad I have to take medication.
And like with me, like I'm OCD about like the cleanliness and things being.
See, I don't have any good OCD.
Yeah, your OCD is more you have to be 3 times messier than everybody else, and in 3. You have the thing with washing dishes and,
I have to do
stuff
it
like that.
In multiples of 3. I have to do everything in multiples of 3.
And so not being neurotypical. Am I saying that right?
Neurotypical.
Right. So not being neurotypical. Have they linked that to hereditary? Or genetics.
Yes.
So
if you're autistic, you're more likely to have an autistic child. If you're ADHD, you're more likely to have an ADHD child.
Right. Okay. So like that, like my friend Gustav, he's a friend of ours, and he actually came to the last event. Or whatever.
I remember he had a booth.
His whole family was in that documentary, because he's got mild Asperger's, and I believe I might be saying this wrong, but I believe his wife is also not neurotypical, but I know his kid is
autistic.
Is autistic. I blanked on the word for whatever reason, but he's on the spectrum too.
Well, and the more and more research they do, the more they do find there is a spectrum. Almost no one is normal.
Right.
But when she
it'd be like the Kinsey scale where everybody's gay,
yes.
But how gay are you?
Yeah. Although I don't really
I'm
believe
really
in, I don't believe in the Kinsey.
I don't know.
Anyway, so when she came to me and said this, there are a lot more comments. Just
oh, okay.
Facebook is not functioning properly.
Oh no, it's not scrolling.
Okay,
it's not scrolling. Okay, let's go back. Kat said, my son described my friend's cousin that passed perfectly. Never having met him and passed before he was born. Okay, so that's a really common story. People.
Yeah, we were just watching a documentary and they were talking about kids describing dead.
Well, their past
members.
lives. She's talking about just knowing.
Well, no, they said that was another. You weren't watching that part of the documentary. That it's really common for kids to talk about family members that had passed on.
Right, and I want to say my nephew Zachary. And I mean he knew my dad before my dad passed or whatever, but he'll say some weird things kind of out of course but see, in that case not a whole lot of that's accurate, because when Zachary came and stayed the night and him and Andrew were both here,
he was a police officer, but I think he was actually talking about a different grandparent is what we eventually got out of him, or another family member.
I don't know. I was pretty confused by that one. I don't know where he got that because but he was saying it like what he used to call my dad, like
Poppy or something,
Poppy or whatever. So yeah, he used to be a cop. I'm like, no, he used to work on AC. Let's see, what other comments do we have here?
Lots of lag, they said.
Oh yeah, there's a delay. There's a delay between what we do and what you guys do.
And the delay is worse today, I've noticed.
Yeah, I think it's because all the new features they're rolling out. I mean, the other day when I was trying to do the podcast, like I could not even stream the normal way I do. Like I had to do it direct through the cameras. I couldn't go through the studio like I do now. Where I can do all these really cool. Ooh, look, hey, here's another angle, and then here's this angle here. So,
but. Some more backstory on that Caitlin thing is that my husband has 4 younger siblings. He has a younger sister that's my age. We were in class together. Then 3 brothers that are even younger. The youngest is like 12 years younger than him. and they all have these stories about this house. Now, I've never had anything scary to me happen in that house. But when Caitlin came to me and said that it was the bedroom that a lot of the boys,
a lot of the stories come
had
from
issue in. So I, it may have been stupid of me, but I would freak out when I was a kid if they made me sleep alone. I had insomnia. I had a wild imagination. It was miserable. So I told myself I would never do that to my kids. I will never force them to sit in the dark.
And a lot of your personal experiences happened when you were around that age too. So that might kind of add, maybe there's a hereditary thing there as well.
But I definitely pulled her out of that room, and she started sleeping back in our room. And she had been until she was 6 months old. And then we moved her into that room. But she wasn't scared. Like, it didn't scare her. But there was a few weeks later that my friend Jeremy had stayed over, and he had slept in her room, and he had woke up and said, "Weird, I had this dream about a headless man at the foot of the bed." And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm out. Time to move."
But you were telling me another story where she had kind of recounted almost like...
this was after that, shortly.
And I know there's, leave the names out, I know, because... It could be kind of sensitive, but I think it's really relevant to what we're talking about.
I had a friend who was supposed to be my bridesmaid, and we were going to get married in October, and I wasn't pregnant yet, but she was. She was about 4 months pregnant, and she was 5 months pregnant, sorry, and she was coming home from a doctor's appointment, and they were involved in a massive car wreck, and she lost the baby. She went into a coma, and I came up pregnant 3 weeks after that. And I had this weird thought in my head that somehow I had done something wrong.
Right.
But she eventually got better and went on to actually have a daughter, which makes me happy. But she was gone at this time. She had been taken by her parents to Montana, where she was from. I hadn't talked to her in a really long time. And I had never expressed this to Caitlin, at least not that I know of.
Right, you hadn't really thought about it in a while either.
Yeah,
it
was a pretty sore subject for a while, so I didn't want to talk about it. I was giving Caitlin a bath one day, and she just matter-of-factly, she looked at me and she said, I was supposed to go to another mommy before, but she wasn't ready to have babies, so I went to you. And I was like, oh, crap.
Right, and that just, guts you, out of the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I had to have Steven come in and watch her because I was like, I need to go think on this.
Right, and that's kind of what I was talking about with, she wasn't really, and she was young enough at that, but you were still bathing her. And
she was under 3.
Yeah, and she wasn't verbalizing
these were some of the first
thoughts.
Few sentences she ever put together.
Yeah, and I noticed, in that documentary we were watching a little while ago, it tends to be in the cases that this happens, it tends to be some of the first things that come out of the kid's mouth.
It's almost like as soon as they can articulate, articulate it.
And a lot of people think that that's them recalling the knowledge of the past life or whatever. It's like, oh, they knew how to talk, they just couldn't articulate it or whatever, and then it comes out, and then they grow out of it as they lose those memories or whatever. I saw a really good comment up here I wanted to read. It was from Terry, and I'm missing it now. Let's see. Okay, Bobby says, my oldest son saw an old man standing in his room just before he started screaming. I saw an orange light in the corner of his room. So that's kind of like Caitlin coming downstairs and saying that.
My son also, he's the only paranormal experience we ever had is we were watching that video earlier talking about the possession thing after my friend had that incident, and he woke up and started pointing at his closet and screaming. But also at 6 months, in between 6 months and a year, is when they become aware of the dark and of being alone, and when they start to have a lot of those issues.
She also said, my oldest son had a lot of night terrors. I think his like me, I have dreams of loved ones who have passed. So a lot of people think that that's actually, it's not just a dream. A lot of times they're coming to visit you in your dream because I guess you're more
after
open.
My ex-stepdad died, I had a dream a couple months after he passed away where he had just come to visit, and it was a really boring dream.
Yeah, I have these weird dreams out of nowhere about my dad, but he's not. And a lot of people will think, they'll have that dream and they're like, oh, he was coming to tell me something or something. No, it's when I have these kinds of dreams, it's like we're hanging out and it's something mundane.
Yeah.
Like there's no message. Like a lot of times we're not even talking or anything. He's like just in the room in the dream or something like that. So I wonder if that's not part of like the long-term just grieving process. You know, like that's the way my brain just being like, yeah, it's there in the background, just kind of deal with it. Like, you know, kind of like someone being in the room where you don't necessarily talk to him or anything like that, but you just feel better when somebody else is like around.
Yeah.
You know.
But my son has had night terrors ever since that. And the first time he had one, we had no clue what was wrong. He just woke up in the middle of the night and he was screaming like he was on fire. And he would not stop. We picked him up, we put him in our bed, and he's screaming. I was close to taking him to the hospital.
And when you tell me that, I always think of the kid from Cujo.
Oh,
screaming at
Tad.
Yeah.
But eventually I freaked out and I screamed at him. And that snapped him out of it. He woke up. And it stopped, and I was like, oh, okay, I used to have night terrors. Like, I've discussed on here before, I have a ton of parasomnia.
Yeah, he's still asleep. His eyes are just open, basically.
Well, no, he had woke. His eyes were still shut during this whole thing. Finally, he opened his eyes, and he, like, looked at me. And I was like, okay, we're good. It's his night terrors. He's not dying.
Right.
But, yeah, when Caitlin said that to me, it kind of threw me. I was supposed to go to another mommy, and it's like, that's
well, because
really
it's so,
weird.
like, accurate and matter of fact. You know,
and my friend, her baby was a girl that she lost. She had just found out. So I was like, well, I jacked my friend's kid. Like, I don't know where it's an irrational thought, but I had it.
Right.
And it was a long time later that Andrew started coming out with his stories. Well, when I was a teenager, when my family died in a fire, and it didn't click the first couple times he said, I was like, he's just making up stories. And I don't particularly believe in reincarnation, so...
And Bobby says her son was 2 when all that was going on. So that seems to be like the median age I've noticed, because even in the, and we'll show some clips from the documentary we were watching too, but that seems to be like the median age between 2 and 3, later years of 3, so between 2 and before turning 4, which is a really weird thing, because that's when the brain is still developing, not even to an extent, but like fully.
Yeah.
And the thing is like there's a lot of studies that show, they'll hook kids, and we want to get the EEG and stuff because we want to see how things work, but they'll look where the data is coming from in the brain. They'll ask questions and get the kid to recall certain bits of data to see where the memory is being accessed. And in most cases, like in adults, whether they're lying or not lying, that stuff is still recalled from the parts of the brain that control long-term memory. Right? Because these are things that they've either rehearsed or they've committed to their memory. Before you're 3 years old, that part of the brain doesn't function in that capacity. When they look at kids that are recalling data, like say your ABCs or anything like that, it's still short-term memory. Like because they just learned it. They're still learning to articulate, just being able to talk. That's the only things that usually make that long-term part of a 3-year-old and younger's brain light up is motor function, like learning... Like, oh, okay, I figured out how to move my arm, so that makes that part of the brain light up and stuff. But I think, and I don't know about this psychiatrist. Was he a psychiatrist or was he a psychologist? Psychiatrist. I don't know if he did this particular study, but I remember reading about it way back when. But they hooked little kids up to an EEG, asked them questions about the past life stuff, like drilled into it. And it was making the long-term memory part of their brain light up, not the short-term part of their memory light up. And they're like, that shouldn't happen, especially if they're just making up a story. Because when you're just kind of articulating something on the fly that's not pulled from memory, like you're making it up, that's all from the short-term memory part of your brain. So that's some of the scientific aspect that it's not proof, but it does raise a really good question of like, what the hell is going on there? And I brought that up because we were talking about genetic memory as being a possible explanation for past life experience. And now genetic memory is not proven at all, but I think that there's a lot of good points that are brought up there. And you were talking about in the case, you said, okay, well, you know, take the opposite side of that argument. Why would Caitlin say that?
Yeah.
My idea behind the way genetic memory works is when, you know, babies are being created or whatever, the genetic material that makes up the kid basically would be made up of bits of your own genetic material. So when your brain is forming, you know, parts of my brain are being formed by genetic material from your brain that might contain certain memories or thoughts that you're having during that pregnancy. And so my idea behind that, you know, and I have nothing to back this up, this is just me spitballing, but my idea behind that would be is if you were having those thoughts and feelings during your pregnancy while your daughter's brain was forming, maybe those memories and thoughts and ideas kind of seed in there at that time. And that's how those actual physical thoughts could actually be there. And like I said, there's no data to back that up, but I think it's a cool idea, at least for a book I want to write now, you know, as of like 30 seconds ago. Let's see, we got some more comments here. He's 30 now. He didn't say anything about it. I think he still has things happen. He just doesn't want to tell his mom. At 30, it's still happening. I have that same exact issue with my mom who watches this podcast. So I really feel for that guy, and you should totally not push that with him or you're a bad mom. No,
I tell my mom because when I was a kid, I sleptwalked, I had night terrors, and that eventually turned into sleep paralysis is what I have now. And
right.
When you have parasomnias as a little kid, they tend to not go away. They just turn into other things.
Right, and traumas. Because, like, as an adult, that's a traumatizing experience. But when you're a little kid, you have a problem separating the imaginary from reality anyway. So if you have this very real thing that happens to you where your subconscious is basically terrorizing you mentally and physically, man, that's going to cause some issues growing. Now, you never had the sleep paralysis until you got older.
I was grown with kids. Andrew was already born the first time I had it.
But you did sleepwalk. And I saw somebody else in the comments talk about sleepwalking.
Well, because it's the reverse. Like we've talked about before, there's two chemicals your brain releases when you're asleep that keep you from acting out your dreams. So when you're sleepwalking, when you're having night terrors, those chemicals they're not being produced enough, or they're not being received enough. And when you get older, it tends to have a lashback effect where now all of a sudden your brain is dumping twice those amount of chemicals to stop this action. Then you get sleep paralysis.
And that's probably triggered by something that goes wrong in the growing and development process too. I bet if you go back to, not everybody, because I've seen a lot of cases where sleep paralysis didn't happen until like way into adulthood or something, but yours didn't happen until after your second pregnancy, and some different medical issues came up. So it always seems like there's some kind of trigger that changes the way your body's working, and with little kids it could be puberty. Yeah, are you seeing the same comment I saw that's pissing me off?
No.
My son was 4 or 5. He was scared of the man he saw because my ex told him ghosts don't exist but demons do.
See, that bothered because my parents are when I was little, they were very religious, and they never told me ghosts were demons, but that's the idea I gleaned from what they were saying. It was terrifying.
The man was a demon in his mind. I had to explain to him that's not the case, so he wouldn't be so scared and sneak out to sleep on the couch. He was better afterward. God, that really makes me mad. And, you know, I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't... My parents had a bad habit of talking about shit in front of me that probably shouldn't have been discussed. I grew out. I was resilient in that sort of aspect, but I did sleep with the light on until I was about 12 years old, because I slept in my room, you know, but I had to have the light on. Like, it bugged me. I didn't like the closet monster. I always slept with a blanket or whatever. Basically because I was told, like, as long as I was under the blanket, I was never told there wasn't anything there. I was told as long as I was under the blanket, it couldn't get me.
I slept with my head completely under the blanket too up until I was like 15.
Oh my God, yeah. So, influence is a huge thing. And so, God, I kind of want to punch your ex in the face right now.
But I actually sleptwalked. I've had instances of sleepwalking up until I was about 24. See, I'm 33 now. It probably hasn't happened in 9 years. But I've noticed as I got older, it was when I was under stress. When I was 16 and my mom was in the hospital very ill, I started sleepwalking again.
I sleepwalk, but it's not consistent. Like there was a period of time, and it was when I was super stressed out with things. I would sleepwalk consistently, but most of the time I don't. But if I do, I always get up and eat in the middle of the night, and then I go back to bed and I have no memory of it. And I'll go back to the kitchen, like I've cooked whole meals, or I've got like cookies and milk out, and so I think I've gained most of my weight from just like sleep eating. And that's usually an activity that's reserved for somebody on Chantix, but Ambien. I just do it as a talent. But and we're getting off on like sleep disorders or whatever, but it's all kind of related.
I was going to add that Caitlin had another thing going on around this time. She had an imaginary friend. She had an imaginary friend named Chicky.
I wonder where I've heard that name before.
And Chicky would do this awful shit. Chicky decided to get honey and dump it all over the floor. It wasn't Caitlin, it was Chicky. Our Chicky told her to do these things. And for a while I was like, well, maybe she has some sort of childhood schizophrenia. Like, I understand this is probably normal, but it got to the point where Chicky was a real freaking monster. Like,
it was an outlet for all the bad stuff she wanted to do, and but see, that's the thing. Like, I've noticed a lot of kids that will do that. You know, they'll blame their imaginary friend, but if you don't let them use it as like the excuse or like the out, like if they still get in trouble over it, eventually the imaginary friend will just go away.
Well, that's she always still got
quick.
in trouble because we told her, well, just because Chicky tells you to do something doesn't mean you have to do it. Your friends don't tell you what to do.
Right.
It's still your choice, which seems to have worked really well because she is not at all a follower now. Peer pressure does not work on that child. But Andrew's had much less of these experiences than she has. This was a running thing she had issues with almost until very recently. It's like puberty kicked in and all of a sudden this all stopped.
Well, she's also discovered other things, so...
Yeah.
She's distracted.
Junior high.
Yeah, and technology, you know.
Technology,
I cannot, like, anytime she's around and I'm like, hey, Caitlin, she won't look up from the phone or the tablet or whatever, and I'm...
Well, it's interesting because she has had a lot of the same experiences I did growing up. The difference is I watched a lot of horror, I read a lot of horror, she didn't. But now she's interested in the same things I was at that age. She wants to write scary stories. She wants to read creepypastas on the internet.
Well, and even when she, you know, over the past, like, few, you know, she's grown up a lot in 4 years. Because she's at that age where you transition from...
Yeah, it has happened fast.
Being a total child to, like, young adult sort of thing. But she was always interested in, like, our show, like the videos we did and stuff like that. And I took her on the ghost hunt. The ghost hunt when we all went camping. And then, and we took her on the Granbury Ghost Walk for her birthday that one year, too. And so she's always had, like, kind of an interest, but she was never susceptible like the other kids were. Because, like, when we were screwing with the whole pack of children, like, they were all over the map, scared, and she was just, whatever. Like your kids have learned just not to believe me about anything I say.
Really young was when they were a lot younger, YouTube and everything was getting a real foothold. And social media was getting such a foothold that I very young had to explain that things on the internet, they're not real. Because they would come, I saw this thing online, let's do that. That's not a thing. So we had to have these really long discussions about what's real and what's not real on the internet. Right. Checking your sources, checking alternate sites.
That makes it a lot of not fun for me because they check
They'll Google. I can't lie to him now. Like Andrew, I told him that water bug he flushed was going to come out of the sewers as a giant and eat him. So he Googled it. Water bugs don't get that big. Like, oh, why did I teach them this?
Yeah, it's horrible. Like, I hate it when they fact check me. I'm like, I'm an adult. You're supposed to believe everything I tell you. They're like, no, we especially don't believe anything you tell us.
Yeah, like when I went to the sand dunes when I must have been 5 or 6, and my dad told me the sandworms from, I don't remember if it was Beetlejuice or Dune, were living in these sand dunes, and it backfired because they wanted me to go to the sand dunes, and I would just scream and throw myself on the ground. No, I don't want to go where the sandworms are.
Yeah, my dad told me that things would come out of the dirt in basically like tremors, and then and they would like pull us down, and so we, like, me and my friends were actually scared to like walk around in the yard at night.
Because part of being a parent is purposefully traumatizing your children.
I never miss an opportunity to lie to your kids about something.
But now they're...
I really like what Allie's boyfriend said to Andrew.
Oh, Zach with the sunscreen?
Allie yelled at him for that.
It was so funny. If you put sunscreen on your eyes, you can look at the sun.
I thought it was brilliant.
Neither of my kids did it.
Yeah, Allie's like, don't tell them that. I'm like, they're not stupid. I mean, they are, but, they'll Google it.
Yeah. I taught Andrew to read. Now he can Google things.
But, okay, so let's say for a minute that the things they're experiencing aren't just a kid's imagination, right? Let's say...
Which, just as a side note, most likely they are. I don't think my kids are seeing ghosts or have past life experiences.
If I have to put a number out there and I have to believe in the paranormal, I'm going to say 9 out of 10 times it's kids say weird shit.
Oh, they do.
Kids, I was a kid. I said weird shit. I'm pretty sure I said I saw ghosts. Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember all of first grade. I had the entire class convinced I was a Terminator from the future because I really liked the movie. And so I used to do weird crap. I'd be like, yeah, I can run faster than any human. They're like, well, prove it. First off, I was fat and I was like the slowest kid in class. But what I'd do is I'd be like, all right, let's all race at recess. And then we would like line up on one side of the park. And my advantage was I was actually smarter than all the other kids. I was like, all right, go. And they would all take off running, and I wouldn't run. And then I would just be, like, waiting at the finish line, like... And they're like, how are you already here? I'm like, I ran so fast you couldn't even see me. And I'd be like, oh, and I can solve complex problems. And, like, so there'd be, like, knotted up shoelaces. And I would just do this with my fingers on it till it came unraveled. And they're like, holy crap, he really is a robot. Okay, so...
I told all my friends that my neighbor was a witch and actually got banned from a few houses by their parents because I made them so scared that I lost 2 friends because their parents were like, you can't hang out with that weird child.
I think it just goes back to I just had a creative brain and I wanted to tell stories and I wanted attention. But yeah, I did that crap like all the time. So... Kids say weird bullshit, so 9 out of 10 times, it's just going to be, hey, your kid is like borderline psychopath, because I'm pretty sure all kids are psychopaths.
It takes a long time for that, for you to not be a selfish person, because you don't understand other people are real until you're a certain age. Like, you can't have empathy or sympathy if you don't know how to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
I was the Terminator. That's all I know. So, yeah, I'm going to go with 9 out of 10 times your kid's just being weird. Now,
at least one of those 10 times, it's the parents' BS that is influencing this. It's parents taking stuff
one of those
out of context.
At least one of those 9 times, because we're reserving one for they're really seeing something in their room. So if we're reserving, so at least 1 out of those 9 times, they're basically just, I can't even think of the word for it. They're just regurgitating the BS that their parents
or they're saying something in, like that documentary I watched, the parents are misconstruing it.
Right, and I thought that, and I actually have that part of it queued up where he's actually talking about going to talk to the parent.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, so the kid had these experiences and things like that. That's really interesting, but now I actually have to go interview them together because I have to decide if the parent is taking what the kid said and playing telephone and like superimposing their own meanings on top of it. Because, you told me your stories, and I was like, okay, I believe that. But I've known you, and like I know how you think. I know how much of that's going to kind of translate. But if we were talking to a client or a complete stranger and they told it, actually, we've had clients that have told us their kids saw things or whatever, and we almost always we take that, we put it in a box, we put that box inside a bigger box, and then we stick that in a backpack and we put it over here for when we need it, because it's completely unreliable, because it's a second. Even if they were relaying what another adult had told them,
it's a secondhand conversation of a secondhand conversation. Like, it's
right. It's interesting and it's applicable, but that is even so far removed from, like, you know, we always say that personal experience isn't evidence, but it's valid. That's almost like 3 more steps down the road from that. It's like, yeah, that's really not even valid. It is. But
it's not valid to us.
It's not. It's relevant, but it's not reliable in the least bit.
Well, and the other thing is, kids pick up on parents' emotions really well. If you're sad, they're bound to act out in ways, or if you're angry. So it's really hard to tell too if the kid's not just reacting to stress in the household. Because like with Caitlin, I always have to wonder, were we having some sort of issues when this happened? Were we having money problems? Were we about to move? I had just been diagnosed with all those chronic illnesses. Was that impacting her? Because I'm
sure all of it was a factor, too.
Because there's been things that I thought I was keeping secret from my children, like when I get sick, and then they'll come in and they'll say something to me, and I realize I have not succeeded at all in hiding this stuff from them.
Right. Because they have a deeper understanding of what we think they have a deeper understanding of. You know, they know when things aren't right. Just like your friends sometimes know when things aren't right, or your parents are like, hey, what's wrong? And it's like, you know, because, you know.
And kids have to naturally be really good at reading body language and attitude, because that's how they survive.
Kat says, Mine don't even tell me things. He was wetting himself well past the age of being potty trained. You know, and if your kid ever grows up and comes back and watches these back episodes with you, he's going to love this.
I posted some stuff about my kids that's going to just shame the crap out of them.
But anyway, she had to drag the information out of
yeah.
them. I find that more credible than, you know, just your kid saying weird stuff in the middle of the night, you know. But okay, so 9 out of 10 times it's imagination, you know, and for various reasons. There's a million different reasons they could have came up with that. But let's say 1 time out of 10, there's really something going on. Maybe even less than that. Maybe more than 1 time out of 10. Maybe like 1 time out of 100. I don't know.
Then you have to ask yourself, why would kids be more able to pick up on these things than adults?
So, like, if I have to answer where the perception comes from that more kids are perceptive, it's because they say more weird shit that adults wouldn't normally just let come out of their mouths in public, I guess. But
we discussed some stuff earlier, like as you age, you filter out more extraneous data. Your eyes, you don't pay attention to stuff that doesn't matter. We have this natural ability as humans to block out static. And I think kids have... So a lot of kids, like when my daughter was growing up and a few years before that, were diagnosed as ADHD. Because their parents suddenly became aware that they were having attention problems, which is totally normal. But they did not understand that this was normal. That kids, they see and they hear more.
Well, and that's the thing, and they would be more prone to talk about it, because if they really see something,
filter.
Yeah, if they really see something as paranormal, it's just kind of like superimposed into the real world, and they don't realize it's out of place, so they don't know that maybe they shouldn't talk about it. You know, it's just. You know, why wouldn't there be a man with fire? You know, it's like, because she didn't even seem... Like,
she was not scared.
Yeah, she was just like, oh, God, he's keeping me up, sort of thing, you know? And it's, to us, we're like, what the F? To her, she's, yeah, whatever, you know, and...
And I'm married to Steven, so I learned from him helpful things to not react to these things in a way. So we just kind of said, okay... Well, why don't you go show us where this was going on? So she takes us in the room, she shows us, and I decided to err on the side of caution and let her sleep in the room.
Oh my God, I wish I had the video queued up that you have of Caitlin.
Oh, her with the demons.
Is that on your profile? Maybe I can...
It's on my YouTube.
Oh, you have a YouTube?
Yeah.
Where's your YouTube?
Oh.
You carry the show while I look for your YouTube on here.
I don't know where my YouTube is. But someone else had posted something. Yeah, Bobby said you have to be careful because kids will sneak up and listen in the next room. And that's something else I wondered about Caitlin is, has she heard my mother-in-law? Has she heard her grandmother talking about this stuff in this house? Or one of my husband's siblings? And is she maybe heard us talking about it? Because kids hear things. They pay attention. So I can never know for sure what exactly happened.
What's your name on YouTube? I can probably look it up that way.
Don't know.
Oh.
It's probably my name.
Sarah Hadfield? Really? You're that unoriginal?
Yes. Well, it was just for little videos of my kids.
You know what? I use your name so much in I bet it comes up in like 3,000 videos.
You might want to try my other email, the one that.
Oh God! Should have better prepared.
Why God? Why questions?
Well, I don't think it's gonna. Oh.
What is that? ADHD.
Is that at Gmail?
Yes.
So that might actually be the.
Yeah, and that's kids have a harder time filtering out emotions. They're more likely to act on things. They're more likely to say things. I don't know how to carry the show.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to find it that way. Damn.
I can find it and I can send it to you.
Okay, yeah, do that. I'm just gonna queue up the other thing I had to begin with. Okay, sorry. I just brought the whole show to a fucking standstill. But let's see. Have to be. They're more accepting that data is we chalk it up to stress or being tired. They accept it as right. You know, they're just not gonna differentiate the two from each other. Oldest had ADHD when he was young. I don't know if that makes him have these things. In that kind of, I think that kind of sort of would maybe make somebody more susceptible to it. And I mean, and you have the whole poltergeist theory or whatever, when they're going through all those emotions and puberty changes, things like, you know, they do that.
Man, if that was a thing, I'd expect shit to be flying around my house on the daily.
Yeah.
Because Caitlin is very, very 12.
Yes, very, very much so. Y'all are doing good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Sometimes we do that. We'll just go off on a tangent and be quiet and just have dead air for about 20 minutes, you know, because that's how we roll.
We're professionals.
Yeah.
I can mouth breathe and smoke on camera.
Yeah, your dad was really making fun of you last week for that. I don't blame him
and
either.
The more he makes
it's
fun
really
of me,
annoying. Every time I watch our old videos and I'm like, there's an EVP, you know.
And the more y'all bother me about it, the more I have to do it because y'all give me anxiety.
I'm gonna break that fucking thing.
I've got like 3. Good luck.
Anyway, but yeah, like I if I had to think of reasons why a child would be more susceptible to experiencing paranormal things, they're going to be more open because their brain isn't as developed, you know, not as many folds in there, things like that. So everything like immediately impresses on them, like because like their sole purpose up until like age 5 is to just take in as much data as humanly possible, because they're trying to function as this like organism, you know. As an adult, we don't want to learn anything else. I mean, try talking to somebody about, you know, opposite politics or something like that. I don't care. I don't know.
I don't want to hear it.
I don't possibly want any more data than what I already have right now, because I've got bills to pay. I've got things to worry about. I don't care about anything new. And so it's not that they actually see more, it's that they're more accepting because they're more willing to take in more data. And then, you know, there's the theory that animals are sensitive to things like that too. And I don't think it's that they're more sensitive. It's, it's a more primitive sort of brain. Everything they do is completely about instinct and sensory input. So just naturally they see more things. But you had said something earlier about younger eyes seeing things differently.
Well, and I mean,
in that is actually
literally
true.
They hear differently. They hear more too.
They hear on a bigger spectrum than we do. And I'm talking like 20 hertz difference. The lowest that humans are measured to hear is at 20 hertz. But the average for an adult is actually like 30 to 40 hertz.
Well, and higher pitch noises too, because they had that ring for a long time that they would play that older people couldn't hear, but kids could. They can hear, they can literally hear and see more.
And so kids can actually see a wider range of colors and visual spectrums too. So when you're looking at the red to infrared spectrum, where it's got that big sweep that we're constantly monitoring, they can probably see deeper into that than we can. And we've noticed that a lot of those anomalies actually appear in that spectrum.
And same would be true of animals, as they can see and hear a different, more than
snakes can see heat. They see in straight infrared. Dogs are colorblind, but it turns out that they see in a completely different color spectrum. It's not that they're colorblind. It's they just don't experience colors in the same way because they're not looking at reflected photons. They are actually looking at different measurements of wavelength. And so it's crazy once you get into like the science of it.
Yeah.
But kids see and hear and probably feel. I mean, if they
feel, smell, because they did tests on very young babies, newborn babies, before they can see real well, because when a baby's born, they can only see about 10 inches in front of your face. That's why when you feed them or when you breastfeed, you want them so close. It's a bonding experience.
I questioned that measurement. Was it a man that did that measurement?
Probably. So he didn't know what an inch was. But they identify their parents via smell. So they can tell the difference at that age from their parents and a non-parental figure.
That's kind of torture if you think about it, because their smell is more sensitive than an adult, but we make them crap into a sack that's just strapped to them, and we're like, why are they crying? They're crapping in a sack, and they can smell it, dude. Right? No?
I don't know.
Am I correct?
I don't know.
I don't know. Don't you have like a wicked, weird, like paranormal sense of smell?
It is bothersome, yes.
How do I smell right now from like across the room?
Fine.
Am I okay?
Yeah.
All right. Give it a minute. Oh, do we get more comment? Animals, and now my mind is thinking my store has Steve that I mentioned. Oh, yes. Yeah, we definitely want to go investigate
what if Steve is actually all the sick fish we put in the freezer getting revenge?
Oh, my God. What if all the dead
they don't
fish
have to breathe anymore.
Well, they do the thing from the cartoon where they all get together and they get into a trench coat and pretend to be a person, and they walk around, and then they flip that valve you're talking about because they're trying to flood the store to free all their fish friends. It's a freaking plot. That's what it is. It's a bunch of fish pretending to be humans. No?
Oh, I was just reading another comment. When babies are very, very young, what do you think they're smelling at? Well, actually, until they're about 3 months old, smiles are more a reflection of physical feeling. Like gas will make a newborn baby smile. It
makes me smile.
They're not actually smiling at anyone. Then when they're about 3 months old, kids do that weird thing where they'll just randomly look up and smile at something.
Right.
Almost like when you're playing with a cat and all of a sudden it starts looking over your shoulder and you're like, should I be nervous?
I don't know, Quincy. Should you be? It's just you and me now, Quincy.
So I wonder if they're seeing stuff we aren't.
Yeah, well, in the smiling, they think that's also like a defensive. Like, babies look like the father up until a certain age because so the dad won't eat them. It's an evolutionary throwback.
And also the eye to face ratio is larger on it. Their eyes are bigger because that's what humans perceive as cute. It's an evolutionary mechanism to keep us from strangling them when they cry for 72 hours straight.
Side note, elephants think we're cute.
Yes,
like
I
puppies.
saw that. They did brain scans and they thought that the way we see dogs, elephants see us, which I think is the most awesome thing ever.
I think it would be great. I would love to be an elephant's pet.
Well, there's that video of that baby elephant rolling all over that lady. And I think of my kids when you show them a kitten or puppy and they just have to mess with them. Like that elephant's treating her like my kids treat a kitten.
It's so funny. I don't know how we get off on these tangents.
I don't know either.
But, yeah, like there's all these defense mechanisms. So, they're like, oh, the kid just looks up and sees, and they automatically assume it's paranormal. But I don't necessarily think that's true either. But it is always weird when they seem to be interacting with somebody that's not there.
Yeah.
And the biggest evidence of that or instance of that is if you've ever listened to a baby monitor.
Oh, the freaking me and Allie would get so hopped up over that thing.
Yeah, because you just hear kids in the other room just talking to somebody that's not there.
And it's when Caitlin was so little, she was still just babbling, baby babble. But she'd pause. Almost like something else was talking.
Right.
And then she'd respond. And I'd go in there and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm just. And
Didn't we all not go in there?
I'm a terrible parent because one day it was so bad. I was like, you know what? She's fine. She's good.
She's good. She does that all the time. It's cool. What if there's somebody in there? Well, I hope they can change diapers.
Yeah. But the other thing we'd get is the neighbors across the street had an infant a little older than her. And if we put it on the wrong channel, we would hear her like singing to her baby, which was horrifying before I knew what it was. It was absolutely horrifying.
Bobby wonders if sometimes it's the family members. I guess, like they're seeing past family members. I mean, if you believe, if you're a strong believer in the paranormal or whatever, or spirits and things like that, then yeah, hell yeah, it's a possibility that it could be that. But I don't know, if you're talking about the straight, there's not a whole lot of evidence.
They see things differently. Think of the doorstop behind your door there. What happens if you pull that doorstop and let it go?
Then I'm entertained for 45 minutes.
But kids find the weirdest stuff entertaining. Like if you have a baby and you take a piece of glass and you shine the light around and make it go play, they'll laugh at that. Like, what does a baby find entertaining? It's like infants dream in utero. What are they dreaming about? Like fetuses dream.
Yeah, that'd be weird.
Like what are they dreaming about? What is a 2-week-old
You're
baby
getting too deep
about?
for me. This is like a conversation I had last week where somebody's we were talking about the speed of light or something, and I was like, hey, think of this. And they're like, what? And I'm like, if you could move the speed of light, what would you see? And they're like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, no. Everything you see is light reflected back to you, but you're moving at the speed of light or faster, so light can't reflect back to your eye. What would it look like?
Nothing.
Oh, it'd be dark. No,
nothing.
It couldn't even look dark either because that's the absorption of all light.
Okay, stop. I don't like this.
That's how Einstein came up with the theory of general relativity. He had to think. If I was on a train, that's how he did his thought experiment. If I was on a train that moved at the speed of light and 2 lightning bolts hit at the same time, here, what would it look like to me as opposed to somebody standing between the 2 lightning bolts? The person standing between the 2 lightning bolts, they would go off simultaneously. If you're moving past it at the speed of light, it would look like one hit before the other one, because the light would hit you at different speeds. And he was like, oh, relativity. And
see, that's not, my brain doesn't crap out anything intelligent when
neither
I think
does
of stuff
mine.
like that.
We have a paranormal podcast where we talk about Bigfoots, whether we would fuck, marry, kill lizard people.
We'd all marry the lizard person. We all decided this.
Well, they're better off financially.
Yes,
it's just the sound
probably politically
decision.
motivated.
They're the only ones that haven't been spotted or discovered at all. Justin Bieber's the only one that's broke that mold with the eye thing.
Oh my god.
So, okay. So this we were watching a documentary today in like the past 40 minutes before the show started. We were like, okay, we got to do a new show. And we found this one called Children's Past Lives.
The one I was looking for is called The Boy Who Has Lived Before. And it's really good. If you haven't seen it, it's free on YouTube. Just look it up. It's pretty interesting.
But we did find this one, and we were watching it, and I find it pretty credible because the guy that's doing the study is a legitimate psychiatrist.
It's the university, a university in Virginia. What are you doing?
Oh, I was going to play some of it. That part's muted. Keep talking. That's me. I'm playing through the commercial.
It's a university in Virginia they're working out of that collects these cases of children that have apparent past lives that tell these stories. So they're going through and they're collecting data on this.
Some statements that the boy has made.
You got it.
Ma'am? Hi.
That's about as loud as it gets for us.
Oh.
But basically what he's talking about is he's going to talk to this lady, and he's talking about how he has to interpret the stories that she's actually told him in reporting this thing, and he's got to interview both of them and make sure that she's not misinterpreting the data. Sorry, I didn't have this up. I'll play a little bit of it.
Interview with Pam Pesca-Solido on May 28, 2000, and her son Harley, who is the subject. All right, so when was the first time that Harley said anything that might be related to this?
When he was around two, when he got in trouble or sent to his room or something, he would sit in his room howling over and over again, "I want my mama," even though when I walked in the room and stood in front of him saying, "Here I am," he would still keep saying, "I want my mama." Then when he was 3, on Halloween, we went trick-or-treating at one of the neighborhoods over there on the other side of town. We pretty much exhausted the possibilities of that particular neighborhood, and I said, okay, well, let's get in the truck and drive over to the other side of town. And he said, "Oh, you mean the part of town where we used to live?" And I said, "Well, we never lived in town." And he said, "Oh, when I lived with my other mama." And I was like, "Oh, your other mama." And
it's interesting that she, like what she's talking about. She said he was 2, between 2 and 3, which is right around the same age that we were talking about. A lot of the other kids in this documentary that they're talking about are between the ages of 2 and 3 when they're first, and that's around where you start really like talking and articulating your thoughts. And so now her first one kind of strikes me as not really compelling, that he's just still crying for his mom even though mom's there. Maybe the kid's just not real good at recognition or whatever. But or
maybe he's just pissed because he got sent to his room.
Yeah, but the second comment she was talking about living on the other side of town or what, like that's just kind of like one of those random things, like out of nowhere. And like we said before, kids like make things up, but it gets a little bit more specific a little bit later when he's talking about specifically the street or whatever. And I find it interesting that this psychiatrist, he didn't really have an opinion one way or the other, and it wasn't like one particular case that made him go like, oh, this is a thing. But he's a child psychologist, and he worked with so many kids that it kept coming up, when it was unprompted. Like that wasn't what he was studying, but it kept coming up on its own. And so he decided that he was going to actually conduct a study of it. And that adds like a pretty decent layer of legitimacy to the idea or the thought that somebody that's really well studied, really understands how the mind works and things like that, still thinks it's a significant enough coincidence, a significant enough occurrence that happens that it's worth studying.
When they were talking about the amount of cases they've dealt with, and it's hundreds, and just in the U.S., there's over 100 cases that have this specific university has studied.
I didn't think about it earlier, but we were, when we were watching this document, we were one person ahead on this, and I made the comment. I was like, well, you know what? It's weird because it was a Indian girl, and they believe in reincarnation, so you would think it would be more prevalent there, like more common or more reported, or at least more accepted.
I think
or
the
whatever.
parents would pick up on it more.
Right. Here in the West, in the U.S., where we're predominantly Christian, we don't really believe. We're pretty loose in the term Christian or whatever. But for the most part, Westerners aren't real big on the idea of reincarnation.
Well, that's something the lady mentions later in the documentary is I wasn't sure who to tell because I live in a very Christian, very right-wing, very kind of old school neighborhood.
They probably wouldn't be susceptible to. But even with that sort of stigma against it, pushing against the grain, there's still a lot of cases where this is getting reported and people are going, oh, maybe this is actually a thing. So it's prevalent enough that even though it goes against the belief of the parent, it's startling enough that they pay attention. Because you were a pretty stout Christian.
Yes.
When your kids were first saying
up
this
until
stuff.
Caitlin was
and
6,
it still kind of put the thought in your head, like that little bit of doubt, because the eerie accuracy of like what she said.
And it's interesting too that I took Caitlin to church up until, like I said, she was about 6. We went almost every Sunday, and she still believed in reincarnation up until very recent. Now she's kind of doing that thing where she's trying to find her way, and we're not really pushing that, so we're just letting it go wherever it may. And it has always pointed towards reincarnation with her. For some reason, that's always been her personal belief. Even though me and Steve, neither of us, I was Christian, Steven's always been an atheist. This was never a topic brought up in our house. It's very interesting that her beliefs went that way, even while we were going to church. Even when I quit going to church and I kind of moved away from that. This has always been her thought process.
I saw a lot of thumbs up and a few angry faces in there. I'm pretty sure they said, atheist! It happens, guys. So, believe it or not, some people just, think for themselves. Sorry.
Hey, Chris, a lot of Christians don't do that.
Well, that's not what I meant. I just mean some
know.
people have different ideas. Oh my God.
I know, just don't step on
I'm
any
going to lose
toes.
every single fan we've got if it's the last thing I do. Don't take offense, guys. But that's the point I'm getting at is that, even Steven, oh my God, I just said that. That's awesome.
Yeah, Steven thought it was odd.
Steven thought it made Steven think, and I always thought it was weird, Steven being atheist and really science-based, which I'm not necessarily atheist, I'm more agnostic.
Well, and Steven's not just an atheist. He's what I call an apathist, which is almost worse than because, okay, I was Christian.
But my point is I always thought it was weird is when we were going on the ghost hunts, he was like, better safe than sorry, don't bring anything home, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wait, you don't believe? He's like, I don't, but... He just thinks it's just stupid to do shit. Win stupid games, get stupid prizes. Right. He knows, he's smart enough to know that he's an idiot. And we don't know anything about the world. Jen says, Christian here married to an atheist. Do you ever just slap him in the face in the middle of the night? Oh my gosh, when I was young, and I was married to Steven and he just did not care. I'd be like, where do you think you go after you die? And he's like, I don't care. I'm like, how do you not care? How? It just always floored me. Like, how is this not a focus point for you? He's like, well, if I focus on that, then I'm not really living. I was like, oh. Well, that makes me feel bad. Mostly, I feel like Christianity just gave me existential dread. Oh, God, so at some point, I was just like, I'm more agnostic than anything. Anyway.
Or later that he said her name was Stacy. Yeah, you remember that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is he eating a limb?
Yes, he's eating a stick, so obviously anything he says is completely invalidated. It's like, so your kid said he was reincarnated and his previous mom's name was Stacy. Meanwhile, he's eating leaves. Is he eating a fucking stick? This is over. I'm done.
Harley had pointed to a road they passed every day and said, "Oh, they've paved it now." Yet the road was paved 30 years before. He talked about an older brother pushing him out of a tree and going on a camping trip to the mountains with his other mother, Stacy. Harley's story fits the pattern of many of these cases. He said these things repeatedly when he first learned to speak, and stopped when he began school at the age of 5. Harley also had a birthmark, which in such cases is thought to be a physical reminder of injuries received in the previous life.
I've never heard that before.
I
could
have.
also
I've got the one on the back of my
remember
leg, and
his own
people
death.
have made comments on it.
And he'd also mentioned when he died?
I think he said 15 or 17, or I honestly don't remember right now. But it was a teenage age.
Mm-hmm. And I think in the letter he mentioned he said he had died in a car accident, didn't he?
Right, in a car accident. I asked him how he died, and he said in a car accident.
See, I like when there's like a lot of specifics with
I believe him. I
the
believe that he
story, because
was
then,
saying
like
something
he tries to do
was
here in a
true to
little
him.
while, you can go back and check it.
The problem is he's checking for like
Like, I
5
believe
years
you.
ago, and the kid literally said before that road was paved, "That's 30 years ago, dude. Go back."
Right? Yeah, he's like, I looked in 1996 and in 1997. That's as far as I got. And I only found this one thing, and it's like, you're in the wrong era, bro.
little voice. Like, yeah.
I've only been watching the documentary 10 minutes, and I already know you're wrong.
Don't break your neck, please. Whoa.
It's possible.
Why is she
that
worried
he
about it?
was
He's just gonna come back.
believed
I was
and-
thinking
and
the
that
same
she
thing.
Took it a little too seriously. Certainly, a lot of kids have imaginary friends that is sort of make-believe, but where they're not quite sure that it's make-believe.
Here, go on my shoulders. You can pretend you're doing the motion.
I didn't get the sense that Pam was particularly wrapped up in the idea of having a child who was a rebirth case. I mean, even though she agreed to a television interview, she is keeping it pretty hush-hush. I mean, she hadn't even told her mother. And so I don't think she's seeking publicity or anything like that.
Commercial. Here, I'll mute the commercial real quick.
You can skip it.
Oh, I can skip it now? Okay. What she says here in a minute, and then I had a comment about it.
Right-wing sort of town, and I just don't know that these new agey sorts of ideas, if you want to call them that are something that would go over big with the local community. But I don't know, maybe they would be. Jesus got born again, so who's to say?
Authentication of Harley's story is essential if this
baptism.
But I like that. I mean, that adds a little bit of credibility to the interview that he's doing too, because he took very careful note of the fact that this isn't something she really. Obviously, she doesn't mind too much if it gets out, because she agreed to talk to him on camera and knew it was going to be in a documentary. But prior to that, she really wasn't seeking like a whole lot of publicity with it or whatever. But Bobby brings up, I wonder if the mom is teaching him these things.
And that's something we don't know. Like, we can't know.
Yeah, especially as the viewer, we can't know. But even as the mom, she might not even be able to know. And I think it was you that even said it in the comments earlier. Kids will listen at the door. I think sometimes we give off subtle clues to kids about things that are going on. Like, we don't know that we're feeding them information, because going kind of back to what I was saying earlier is like they don't have jobs, they don't go to school.
Yeah.
Like their only function during the day is to play, eat, crap their pants, and take in data. So all they're doing all day long is paying attention to everything we're saying and doing. So if you make an offhand comment, you may not even remember some of the comments that you made during the day because you're so preoccupied with life. But, they pull little things. And I used to pull that trick all the time with my dad when I was a little kid. Like, I'd catch him in, like, all these, like, catch-22s because I was paying it. Like, I have an eidetic memory, and it only goes so far. But I would remember certain details of certain things, and I could bring it back up to him later, and he wouldn't remember that he actually said that or told me that, and then he would be like he would think I was super smart or be super impressed that I knew this thing. Like, a prime example is, we used to hang out in the garage while he would be like working on mechanical stuff or like air conditioning, things like that, and he would just be talking Like, I was another adult in the room, like, I should understand about, like, electrical schematics and things like that. And I was just absorbing it. And then later on, when he was, like, bitching about it, I'd be like, well, that is, like, at 220 volts, Dad. You should really do... And he's like, how would you... Oh, he's like a project... No, you just said that, like, 10 minutes ago. And, like, how do you not...
Well, that's what my mom thinks. I'm some sort of medical genius, but she was...
And you're just regurgitating.
Well, she was having me sit in the... She worked L&D. She was having me watch fetal heart rate monitors by the time I was 4. Like, no, I've ingested all this info, even though you don't know you've been saying it. You've been saying it my whole life.
Right. And a lot of times when we say stuff, it's in the moment, like we've just learned it, or we only know that knowledge because we looked it up for that specific thing. But you, as the outside observer, not in that moment, sometimes it's easier to commit that information to memory because you're not in that stressful situation. Like, you don't need the info. That's why so many people are so good at that, like, useless trivia crap. Like, I don't need to know that the Hoover Dam can withstand 55,000 pounds of pressure per brick.
I don't need to know that the Tate murders happened on August 8th. That's not info
right.
that I need.
But when that specific subject comes up at some point in time, and you know that one little bit of info, suddenly it seems super significant, and it's really just that you were able to absorb that data.
Well, Bobby's talking about what she's talking about. That's the difference between my kids. So, like I said, they're 5 years apart. So by the time Andrew came around, my parenting rules had changed quite a bit, and he has an older sister to influence him. So when he was telling me his story, when I was a teenager, this and this and this happened, and he was a lot older when he was saying these things. He was 4, as opposed to Caitlin's 2. I kind of just threw that out the window as influenced by me or by Caitlin or by
especially
Steven.
By Caitlin, because
yes.
Caitlin just will warp his little brain in all sorts of things.
Oh, and she tries to.
Yeah, absolutely. I would too. I don't blame her.
But when Caitlin was that age, I just...
There's not the same opportunity for that sort of thing. Now, honestly, like, I know your husband too, and I would not put it past him to seed things in Caitlin's brain to make her come talk to you.
Oh yeah, he's done it before.
And I wholeheartedly believe he would take a lot of those things to the grave. So all this stuff we're talking about could really just be your husband playing a really elaborate long game prank on you.
Well, and that's the thing, you never know.
Like, on his deathbed, he's gonna be like, "Hey, remember the blood and fire on the walls thing? That was me." And you would know. You would know he was telling the truth. You'd be like, "God damn
like
it."
the sticky thing on the wall
I
incidents.
did 5 podcasts about... Oh, my God, that is great. He let the kids
Oh, my
take
gosh.
the rap
I came
for
out
that.
of my bedroom one morning, and there were, lint rollers. Lint rollers. They have the things you can pull off, like tape. And I came out, and there was about 10 or 11 of these things stuck on the wall. And then the lint roller was stuck on my mirror in the bathroom. And I had it out with my kids. Which one of you did this? And neither one of them. I was like, okay, I know it was one of you. There's only 2 of you. I took them in separately.
I remember you texting me. You're like, I'm going to figure out which one of these little bastards did it.
I interviewed them. Like, I posted the whole thing on Facebook, and they're blaming each other. And finally, I'm like, okay. So I messaged Steven, and he just messaged back, oh, that was me. Oops. And then I had to go apologize to my kids. I hadn't yelled at them or anything because it wasn't a big deal. It was just driving me crazy. Who
Never
had done
apologize
this?
to your kids. What are you thinking?
If you do something wrong, apologize to your kids.
That's worse than not censoring what they watch. Now they think you're weak. They sense weakness in you.
It's just teaching them that it's okay to apologize when you're wrong and to admit you're wrong.
Let's see. What else does Dr. McDoctor have to say? Oh, this is where he goes and does the research.
Whether Harley's previous personality ever existed.
Is the display thing on?
I started at the date of Harley's birth. I'm just working my way back, looking through the obituaries.
I've been where this guy is. Research is...
Here's an accident where 6 people were injured, but it looks
rough.
like 9 were killed. So we find that a 15-year-old named Jonathan was killed in a car accident, and he had a mother named Stacy.
Ah, that's pretty close.
Man.
Kid said he was in a car wreck. Says
No,
name was
he
Jonathan.
said if I find.
Oh,
No, yeah, her mother was Stacy, but he says mom's name was Sheila. That's
94,
Stephanie.
93. I found
70?
one
Sheila
Jonathan
something. Stacy.
that was 19 when he was killed in a car accident. Of course, Harley had said that he was 15. But also the mother's name didn't match. I think this one was named Sylvia, where the one thing that Harley seemed certain about was that his mother had been named Stacy. Where are you going to get?
Similar, but like we said, he
I
was,
need to
you know,
picture
in the
you just
wrong
standing.
time period.
But these cases
Hold
constantly
on, I want to
throw
back
up
it up just like
questions
1
which
second what she said there.
I need to picture you just standing there.
Finding a previous personality match isn't scientific proof of reincarnation.
That's okay. So that's interesting. You said that. Like I know he didn't find what he was looking for, and even us who are pretty skeptical of the claims to begin with.
Everything.
Anyway, yeah, or like you're looking in the first off, you're looking in the wrong spot. You know, so even us who are skeptical are like, at least do the research right. You know.
Well, and I'm sure he's gonna. This is a short documentary.
Yeah. We're not gonna play the whole damn documentary, but yeah, you know, maybe he goes and finds something a little later. I hope that would be really cool. It'd make a better documentary.
That's why I like The Boy Who Lived one, because they actually take him to the island he said he lived on, and he takes them to the house where he said he lived, and he describes the accident in which he died, and they go through the history trying to find.
And it was.
I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Apparently, we need to watch this tonight.
It's been a few years since I watched it.
But she's like, even if they find the match, that's not it's not. I guess I get that being it's not scientific evidence because the kid could.
She says not proof. It's like us. It is evidence. It's not proof.
But man, that'd be really hard. Like if you get into specifics, like where you know things that nobody else knows, and you're able to go look up the history of it and actually find things, and it all lines up, kind of like the documentary you're talking about. If that's how that goes, then. I mean, what the hell would be scientific evidence?
And the question they posed at the end of this documentary is, did his parents do this for publicity? Did they look this up? Did they see this info? Did they string this kid along? Like, because you don't know.
Because even in that case, it like as is like a parent or an adult with a kid, you don't even really have to coach the kid too much. It's because you can. If you try enough, you can manipulate a kid into believing a certain thing. So as long as they just keep telling the kid these stories over and over, the kid will actually believe it. Like they don't have to say, "Oh, tell the man this" or what. It's
anything we do with religion or politics. Yeah, even if you're not trying to brainwash your kids, you are. Just by the things you say, the way you act.
The person he's talking about could be anybody in the world. A very hard find with information.
He said it was local.
Yeah, the kid's story was it was like on a very specific like street, like they have locations, and that's why we're saying he's looking in the wrong time period because the kid actually gave a reference.
He said, "Oh, that road's paved now."
Yeah, and so they know when that road was paved, so you know it had to be prior to there, and of course there was that specific road, so you know it had to be local to the area, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So those are the cases where you could actually go in and do research and like tie it to something. But yeah, if the parent did want to like try to get publicity or something like that, it'd be very easy for, and it would be to their detriment to like convince the kid to lie to the psychic. It would be better.
If you're trying to go for
effective,
that,
it would be more effective to lie to the kid and
just tell them the story
over and over.
Hey, remember
over.
that time you were blah 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 blah.
I mean, because people brainwash, like horrible people brainwash kids all the time and manipulate children.
Yeah.
It's because it's easy. It's not that hard. So,
because I found specifically with my politics, even though I don't often talk to Andrew about it, he'll hear the random comments I make if I'm watching the news or if I'm driving in the car or if we're talking about, and he'll parrot my ideas back to me.
Right, and at least up to a certain age, he's probably going to have the same ideals and thoughts that you. I mean, whether you can encourage him to think for himself, him and Caitlin, you can encourage them to think for themselves all you want. And like you were talking about with Caitlin's religion, you're letting them find their own thing. But certain ideals, they're going to pick up from you and they're going to parrot, like no matter what you do, until they get to the age where they really want to be independent. And then they're almost going to do the exact opposite, whether they actually believe that thing or not. Just despite you, because you're the parental figure or whatever.
Yeah.
So, it's really hard to trust any kind of thought process or recount or anything like that during these development years.
And Jen said earlier you played a part where the mother was clearly prompting the response. She asked him, "Do you remember when you told me?" Yeah, we brought that up when we were watching it.
Yeah, when I watched it, I said, what did I say? Oh, leading the witness. Yeah, objection, leading the witness. Yeah, and that's something that even as adults we have to be very careful when we're talking to our clients about their experiences, like on residential cases and things like that, because we have to make sure we're not influencing an experience they're telling us about. Like, actually, Jen, if we actually get to come out to your shop and do that, when we're talking to each, obviously you would be one of the witnesses there, and you mentioned another coworker and the guy that owns the shop. If provided he's not too reluctant to talk to us, we'll have to talk to all of you separately. And we'll have to be very careful in the way that we word our questions, in that we're actually getting your unfiltered response. Because there's situations, and it's happened to us in the past before we knew what we were doing. But I remember when we were like interviewing witnesses, and they would say, "Oh, this thing happened," and we'd be like, "Oh, was it like this?"
Yeah.
Compared to another experience we may have heard about, or blah blah blah. And then there's been a lot of experiences that we've heard, but it's very, very obvious that it's through the filter of, okay, they may have had this experience, but then they saw this movie it happened in, or this paranormal show it happened in, or they have some kind of preconceived theory about what it is. So they have adapted whatever that experience was in their memory to fit that certain description that they're trying to relay to us. And I can't, who was it? We went to their house, and we were doing the EMFs in the bedroom or whatever, because they were having sleep paralysis in the bedroom, and they're like, it's like the other people that have the shadow people and the men in hats or whatever, but they had never seen the men in hats or shadow people sort of thing, but they were comparing experience. So they were almost taking the experience of kind of sleep paralysis and kind of this other experience that they were having and putting them together.
We even have to be careful with each other.
Oh yeah.
Like if let's say me, you, Allie, and Kristen go out, and me and Kristen have an experience, you have to say it at the same time, or we have to tell a third party, because otherwise we're feeding each other information. And even if we don't mean to do it, your memory is faulty, and people like to be like other people. We want.
Right.
So we will change our information. We've noticed this on videos we've watched before, where we won't remember something correctly because it's been filtered through time.
Or us trying to retell it.
Yeah.
And that happened at Kyle, actually. And we really noticed that when we got to the part where we were writing parts of the book, because we knew what all these stories and experiences were. And when we sat down to write each individual chapter, like, all right, let's review all the footage again, just to make sure we have everything in chronological order and we've got all our facts straight. It's not just the story we've told over and over. Because my main concern was people reading the book and then going back and watching the video and it not matching up, and then us shooting our own credibility out of the water, just because, not because we were trying to pass anything off, but just because we remembered it incorrectly.
Well, and I did the Kyle chapter.
Right.
And if you'll remember, I actually wrote most of the Kyle chapter literally the day after it happened, because I was posting it to Reddit. The no sleep. I mean, I was altering some parts of it because it's a fiction site. But even by the time I had gotten home, I wasn't remembering things correctly.
Right.
I was remembering them out of order. I was remembering different responses than what I had.
Well, and we've said it so many times, human memory is just completely unreliable. Is a tool for actually accounting what's going on. But, you know, like you said, we have to be careful even with each other and ourselves, you know, when we're trying to go through that. And that's why we've changed our procedure over the year in something we're going to do going forward, where we have people that are designated to investigate the scene. And Kristen has basically been designated to observe us, our reactions, because her specific job is to take note of what are our emotional states, what are our mental states, what are the things we're saying at the time and saying that we're experiencing at the time, as opposed to when we go back and recount it later, or we're looking at the evidence. Is there any
it's something that's really
account?
hard for all of us, especially because we are so skeptical and we tend to make fun of each other. So a lot of times we don't say out loud things we're feeling.
Right.
Oh, I feel anxious
And that's
now.
something we're
I
gonna
feel
have
like
to-
someone's behind me.
Yeah, and it's something we've got to get better about as because even if we don't, if I feel something behind me, and in my logical brain I'm like, there's nothing really behind me, I still need to say
it anyway.
because I'm having that feeling.
Yes.
And
Watching the Antioch video, we actually did that better back then.
right, and we were more open to it. We, you know, and so, but I feel like we can get back there. It's because I feel like it's not as silly anymore. Like we've gone to the point where we're like, okay, we've disproven so much stuff, we feel like it's silly. But now we've come full circle, and we're actually focusing more on a lot of the psychological aspects of it. So it doesn't feel as silly anymore, because we feel it's important to document that physical and mental experience, even though, you know, we may not think a lot of that stuff is paranormal, but it's worth documenting.
Oh, thanks for watching, Bobby. She's gonna go to bed, but she's at work.
Okay, sleep tight. Don't have any nightmares. We're getting pretty close to wrapping up. Anyway, if you guys got any good questions about our topic tonight, throw them up as we kind of ramp down into the last part of these discussions. Actually, and we've been trying to do really good about you know, paying attention to the comments and things like that. Facebook has just been an absolute nightmare, because like it always shows us it's behaving really well right now, but earlier I was trying to do a watch party and it wouldn't work, and now they got the new Premiere thing, and most of the time it only shows us like every other comment, and so I always feel bad because I have to go back through all the comments and try to catch everything in text form that we didn't get during the show. But
yeah, Kristen just posted, we need to be more vocal about what's going on when it's happening. I'd like to know when it happens and what's going on at the time.
Right, and the best way to document that stuff is to verbally document. You know, we're all standing around with recorders anyway, and what you're supposed to be doing with those is like, 9 a.m. I felt a cold draft. But we don't do that, we're trying to capture the voices of the dead, so I guess...
Well, we get to a spot, then we do EVPs. There's no reason we can't say aloud what we're doing on the way there. The problem is I think a lot of us think that it's silly.
We got to get over it. We've got to do better about. And this is the best opportunity too, because we're changing up the format. We're looking at investigations differently than when we first went into investigating. We have a better idea what we're trying to accomplish, and we have a really good team in place.
Yeah.
Like the people we have in our group, not only have they been here a while, and we have a good feel for each other and how we need to do things, and we can function as a more cohesive unit, but what's really good is we have the right people in the right places now. It took a while to figure out that, okay, Allie's going to be really good at basically working the perimeter in documenting things that way. We have your dad on the team now who knows so much about photography and the way light works and things like that. He's a really good third-party documenter. Like, he's not part of the experiment. He's more like Kristen,
Yeah.
but at documenting it with equipment. Kristen will have a video recorder, but it won't be to record the show. It will just be basically for, like, that's her way of taking notes, and she's going to be observing us. So we have 2 people observing a party of 3 all the time, and they're just going to be documenting what we're doing.
I'm still not sure I'm in the right place.
I think you're in the right place because you're in the middle of it, because you seem to be more prone to actually experiencing the thing. So putting you in the middle of
Which
the
is
experiment,
weird because I don't believe in any of them.
I think I think prone was the wrong word for it. I think it makes more sense because if we can get it to the point where you'll tell me you're feeling something behind you, like if you can document the feelings and things, the sensory input that's going on at the time, it makes more sense because you were neutral. You're a complete blank slate to
Kristen
it.
says Sarah needs to be the bait. I'm always the bait.
And that's actually a really good analogy. We're using you as the bait, and what I'm doing is I'm actually monitoring the technology and the controls. I'm making sure the controls are always in place so that you guys can focus on the experiments. So we have a really good team. And I say now is a good opportunity for it because the first part of that is because now we have a good team and everybody's in the right place. But now we have an opportunity to go back to all these places where we have had experiences. I'm talking Kyle. I'm talking Antioch.
Kyle.
I'm talking, we need to go back to George's Creek. We need to go back to White Church. And I mean, a lot of those things, they are busted. Like, we know they're busted because we're logical.
Yeah.
We know what was going on at the time.
Kyle wasn't busted.
But some of it is. But the thing is now we have the ability to scientifically do that, to show what was going on one way or the other. Like, period. And so we need to do that. Like, it's one
This show makes me want to go on a ghost hunt right now.
I know. And it's one thing for us to say, like, okay, we knew it was cows at White Church that were making the moaning noise.
We should go to Kyle tonight.
But we didn't get it on audio. We didn't get it on camera. We just set it to the camera. And that's all well and good, but it makes more sense to document it.
Yeah.
And that way it's case closed. So we're not leaving the door open for somebody else to go out there and just to say, well, they weren't hearing cows. They said that, but I mean, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of those where we know what's going on, we can go out, document it, get it done. And then for the actual documentary that we put out, you know, it doesn't just have to be one documentary per location. You know, if there's a lot of places that have the same types of activity that we're able to explain or not explain, you know, we can put those together, and it's more of a documentary about a type of activity that we're going and studying, and then we put it together and we talk about it. You know, like this show.
Yeah.
We've talked about your kids. We've talked about this. We've talked the reincarnation thing, actually being susceptible to, you know, it's kind of all wrapped together.
I mean, even down to legit scientific medical factors.
Right. It's actually a bunch of different topics that are kind of tied together, and then it's, you know, coated in this nice, tasty, outer crunchy shell with a color coating, and, you know, and it makes a really good 1.5 hour, 2 hour segment. You know, well, at least I hope it makes a really good 2 hour segment. I'd love to go back to all those places with our new equipment and methods. I would too. That's why I mentioned it.
So let's do it.
I don't want to go right now.
Oh my God, everyone sucks. Everyone but me sucks.
All right, we'll go out. So if we go out tonight, do y'all want us to live stream that? I'm just going to get like 30 comments.
If we go out,
well, why aren't you taking me?
We have an invite to another activity that I'm not going to. I'll show you the message.
Oh, okay.
Nothing gross. I just
No, we can't go out tonight. I actually don't have any of the equipment prepped.
Oh, well, then...
is the problem. And I hate going out, like, just to go out.
Have I mentioned I hate you?
You know what sucks is when we're like, all right, let's just go out for fun because we haven't gone out in a while. Like, every time we ever went to Kyle with one piece of equipment to test it.
Something god-awful happened.
And something god-awful happened, and it's something so open-ended. It's like...
let's just go play at Kyle. Oh, a big monster tried to run us down.
Yeah, that's when the, like, prolific thing happens, and it's like... The one time I didn't bring 9 cameras, 2 recorders, a thermal camera, 4 witnesses, a catapult, a flamethrower.
Your mom will go with me. She's cooler than you.
That was like 5 insults rolled into one. Your mom will go with me. Boosh! That was awesome. It's like, man, I don't want to go out tonight. Your mom will go out with me. Hot damn! That's just bad.
But no, it is true that it's often just me and you when we do this, or it's me and Allie. It used to be me and Allie when we go out on our drives, and but when it's just me and you at Kyle, some horrible, god awful nightmare happens, and we're like
me getting locked out of the car.
I didn't mean to.
That was so horrible.
You called me the C word.
I was horrified. I have to say that was the moment I was the most scared in my entire life. Just, I look up, like, I can see just fine. Then all of a sudden I just see my camera flying into the fucking darkness. And I'm blind. I'm like, Sarah, help me find the camera. Sarah? And all I hear is...
It's gone.
I'm like, what the hell's going on?
What had happened is we were out there with my phone, and he had the camera.
This is exactly how it went, by the way.
And I turn around to take a picture.
Turn around.
And I see a shadow in the flash. And my brain goes, oh, that's your flash, Sarah. It's your shadow. Don't worry about it. And then my brain goes... I'm behind the light source. And
yeah, we both were, actually.
And that's when I go, what?
Now, where's that picture?
Into the car.
Where did that picture go?
It was just grass.
So, no shit. So you might have missaw what was in the picture.
There was a shadow there. I'm not honestly sure if I actually did ever look at the pictures from that episode, and that phone is gone.
Which phone was that?
That was the last phone I had, the one that we lost all the data for. You tried to save it. But no, I had run to the car, and I did not know that when you push one of Brad's locks down, they all auto-lock.
But we also discovered on a later expedition that apparently... the thing is, funny thing about my car, it's haunted.
Yeah, your car
But only at Kyle.
Only at Kyle.
I've had multiple problems with the car locks.
Oh, that was a different cemetery, Bobby. Antioch's the one with the weird thing with the glowing eyes. This is Kyle, and if you watch more of these, it's probably one of our least favorite locations because it's the only place where we've had legit, like, personal experiences that are... And we've all had them. And
what's really great about this, for the longest time we thought that we were having personal experiences and not documenting any evidence.
But then we go look at it and there's so much evidence.
And then after we had accumulated about 13 trips out there.
It's over the course of 4 years.
Yeah, and then we decided, okay, we're going to go back and we're going to make a comprehensive video about it. Went back, completely reviewed everything, like... going back with fresh eyes, looking at it, there was so much stuff in there that somehow we ignored. And it's weird that we ignored it because we were so open to it being there too, because we all saw stuff out there.
Yeah.
And man, I feel like we waste every fourth podcast bringing it up and talking about the same things.
I don't think we've had a single podcast where we have not brought that up.
Oh, we've had a few. But, I mean, I try to pull from all our cases when I talk, because we've had, like, the gamut of experiences. You know, people talk about, oh, have you seen orbs? Yeah, I've seen them on this case, this case, this case, this case. Have you actually seen a full-bodied apparition? Yeah, on these 2 cases. Has anything ever touched you?
I would have hauled that. Yes, Bobby, I did. And Brad, in trying to get to the car, because I had locked him out, called me the C word. And that's a bad word, and that's the only one you get because I had it coming. Because that was terrifying. And Kyle is, I think, the only place we've ever actually run in. We've walked real fast out of a few damn places. But in Kyle, we've run.
Twice. More than once. I think it's twice. Once we hauled ass from the middle when we heard the animal. That was a full-on sprint.
And we didn't run away. We ran out of the way. We didn't get all the way to the car or anything.
Yeah.
We just actually thought there was an animal running at us.
Yeah, my initial response was like to try to get between you and the animal or whatever.
Well,
at the same time screaming, film it.
I live in Cleburne, and we have this big state park road that arcs around the town. And right after this, we started going to Kyle. There was about 8 counts of mountain lion sightings and attacks on this road. There's also feral hogs. There's a lot of coyotes. So when we hear something out there, very often we assume it's like a large animal coming to kill us.
Well, I mean, that's scarier than an actual, like a ghost. It's creepy. It's scary. It'll startle me. But if I think there's a mountain lion or a dude with a chainsaw...
Yeah, and we've heard gunshots in one case, I think, when we were on...
that was out at... Carter.
And they weren't, like, shooting. Someone was just on their property shooting.
Yeah.
But it was enough to make you run, because in Texas, people they'll shoot you.
That would be the other place we've actually run out of, and it was because of the gunshots. Because you were ahead of me because we were looking.
But I had just had back surgery.
Yeah, and you bolted towards me, and I didn't understand. And for some reason, I didn't hear the first gunshot.
Yeah.
And I just saw you running at me. I was just laughing because I
then
thought
he heard
spooky.
the gunshot, and we all.
Yeah.
But that's a legit reason to run. Like
that's a legit reason. But Kyle, I've never heard.
We were out there during the day, and we have heard gunshots out there. But it's also right next to a dove hunting lease.
Right.
So very seldom are we out there during dove season, but people do go out there to shoot.
How about the time you ran out of George's Creek, or tried to?
Oh, my God, that was awful. I have a chronic pain disease, and they'd gone to put a device in my back, a spinal cord stimulator that's supposed to... It sends out an electrical impulse to block the pain from my hand.
Or bypass. Yeah.
But for a while, I was wired externally. There were 2 cords coming out of my spine to a handheld controller. And Brad was sitting behind me in the cemetery, and he jumped up and ran. We heard like an animal, like a legit animal. And I jump up to run.
No, I didn't hear a legit animal. I heard something climbing over the...
Well, I figure it was an animal. But when you ran...
I'm glad you did, because I thought a demon was coming and taking my head.
That's when I barely knew you, so I assumed you were like Steven. And if Steven runs, you better run, because something bad is coming.
Well, to be fair, I didn't run. I was still sitting there. I just jumped and said there's something coming.
You ran to like the edge of the thing and then turned around to talk to me. But I jumped up to run, and something had me. I couldn't move. I was trapped. And then all of a sudden, I get electrocuted, and I can't move at all. And all I can think is my head is the monster. It has me. I had wedged the remote into that bench, and my spine, these leads that are sewn into my spine, had caught.
Yeah.
And when it did, the voltage of the thing got turned up, and it zapped me, and I lost all muscle control.
So you pretty much like tased yourself.
Yes, but in my head, I'm screaming, "The monster! It has me! It has me! I'm dead!"
No, I remember the look on your face. I was like, "What's wrong?" You're looking at me like, "We're looking red."
That is probably the most scared I've been.
That was pretty bad. Of course, I didn't like the time that we got to George's Creek, and there were like the people in the back, fencing equipment.
That's another thing we run into very frequently is people doing illegal things in cemeteries, and rednecks out driving around. Once again, Texas, they have guns.
I don't know. If I didn't think it was not ethical, though, to go back to the theme of today's podcast, I would really like to take a kid on a ghost.
Well,
but it's not ethical. I would never do that.
Well,
obviously,
no, we've broached these subjects before because I have 2 kids. They're both very smart. I mean, they may not seem to be sometimes. They're smart kids, and they've been around this their whole lives. They've heard me talk about it, and neither one of them very much believe in it. So it's interesting, too, to watch them influence each other.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even when I was a kid, I didn't really necessarily believe in it, but, I'd have friends at a sleepover, and we'd tell, scary stories, and that was me trying to wig them out. But after telling this bullshit story that I know I made up, I'd be wigged out about, walking down the dark hallway afterwards or whatever. I'm like, I made this up. Why do I care? Because I made that up out of my own worst fears.
I had proposed an experiment for a while where we take the kids and we have them do things like use a Ouija board.
Oh, okay.
We take us as adults and we do it, and then we have them do it, and we look at the difference.
I feel like that's a CPS call waiting to happen.
Ouija boards are sold as games.
I don't know how legally that would work, but I feel like we would lose a lot of our viewership.
Let's do a
over
poll.
that.
Is it not ethical for me to use our kids in these experiments?
Well, I don't know.
Well, my daughter's 12. I feel like it's more ethical to use her than Andrew.
The box says 8 and up, so maybe in a year.
And with Caitlin, I feel it's more ethical because she does have a lot of real common sense. I know she has ADHD and she does some silly things, but she has a lot of real common sense ability to take care of herself. She's been proving this to me her whole life.
I don't know. I mean, the logic of it is there. Like, I don't believe in Ouija boards.
No.
It's as far as like portals to the other side. I do think it is a conduit to your own subconscious.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I do. I don't necessarily think everybody that's using a Ouija board is faking it, but I feel like our viewership would be split down the middle. I don't know. We have a special type of viewership where they're more on our side of it, but there would definitely be a good portion of these guys. But I think it would be a good poll. I do. I think it would be interesting discussion
in the case of the EEG to sit two different people in front of a Ouija board.
Yeah,
one that believes in it, one that doesn't.
Yeah, and that is one of the experiments I want to do with the EEG, which, since we're in like the last 10 minutes of our show, I guess I'll start going into a lot of our plugs and stuff like that. But if you're new to the show...
So I get to plug something this time.
Yeah, if you're new to the show, you hadn't watched this, we're actually in the middle of a fundraiser because we're trying to purchase an EEG, which is actually EEG/ECG, which is the...
An electroencephalogram and electrocardiograph.
Okay, they don't know what that is. It's a brain scan.
One measures your brain waves, one measures your heart.
And we can do a variety of activities and see how it's... how your brain is being affected.
This is your brain on drugs.
Kind of like what we were talking about with the recall of data.
Yes.
They saw what part the data was coming from, things like that. Then the ECG, that monitors body...
heart elective,
Right, so we can measure like heart rate, see if any of that stuff comes from like adrenal. So we have a bunch of control studies we want to do with that, and then we want to take it into locations that are thought to be haunted, perceived as haunted, and then see how people react to that.
Is it an ECG or an EKG?
ECG. EEG/ECG.
Okay.
EKG is for the heart.
Yes, so
You're the medical expert. Why am I explaining this?
Because I didn't see the thing on what we're buying.
I don't know. We can look at it. But
what else you want to plug?
I don't know. But we're trying to do that fundraiser. I'm not gonna. If you go to the website, you'll see a link for it. If you like what we're doing, and you want to kind of accelerate us being able to get to do those experiments, we appreciate any donations you could put towards that.
Donations in, like, if you want to post on, we like ideas on how to use it, different experiments.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like if you guys have ideas for experiments that we should be trying in our investigations that we're not already currently doing, we love discussions and anything like that. Or if you got ideas for future podcast episodes, that would be fantastic, actually. The only other thing I'm going to plug myself before I let Sarah plug her thing is my books, which I'm pretty excited about them because I just recently got them released as audiobooks. This one's one I wrote. This one's fiction. I won't talk about it too much. It's not too related to NT Paranormal. But After Dark Paranormal Investigations, like all the cases that we were talking about in the podcast, we wrote about all of them in this book. It's got a lot of the science that we use, how we set up our experiments. It talks about the controls, and it talks about our personal experiences.
Why we're doing this.
Yeah, why we're doing it. And it talks about how we got into paranormal investigation, too. So you can find that on Amazon. Actually, you can find it in a variety of different locations now. They're selling our book in Barnes & Noble now.
Really?
Yeah, I found it the other day at Barnes & Noble.
That's nuts.
it really, really weirded me out because I don't think it's good enough to be anywhere except sold online.
Dude, that's like my life dream, though, to have a book on a bookshelf somewhere.
Yeah, it was on a bookshelf at Barnes & Noble.
I didn't write it. That doesn't matter.
And so is this... You didn't because your name's on the back.
I wrote 2 chapters.
You co-wrote. You dictated. And then I rewrote it.
Because your writing style is just...
It had to all match. It needed to be cohesive.
Your writing style is grammatically correct.
Okay, plug your thing, because you are a writer and you're doing some cool stuff.
I'm doing 2 different things. First off is not related to this at all, is a podcast called Strictly Sickly that me and Kristen are going to do over chronic illness. And we've talked about this a lot on this podcast because sometimes it does relate. Sometimes that's involved in our ghost hunting, especially since everyone in our group has some form of chronic illness, physical, mental, whatever. And I'm
mental illness. Hi.
We've been trying to get this first episode done, but Kristen's been super busy.
And sick.
We keep
having to reschedule.
We keep having to
reschedule the Strictly Sickly Chronic Illness podcast because somebody is always chronically ill that week.
And then I've been working on a story with Brad that kind of chronicles our ghost hunt adventures in a new and exciting way. It's called Tales from Dimension 134B. And it's written on the website, right? Like blog style.
Yeah, I will. After we conclude this, I'll actually post some links up to it in the NT Paranormal thing, and people can get onto it. But I think it's really cool how you got to, because it kind of started as a joke. Because when we first went out to Kyle, you had the experience where you walked through the gate. And
yeah, I was telling
different.
Jen about that earlier. I walked through the gate. I walked about 50 yards. And with my flashlight, I look up, I see leaves, I see trees.
And this is nonfiction.
No, this happens.
This is nonfiction up to this point.
I was sober. I wasn't sick that week. Like, it's not like I had a seizure and saw something.
Right.
I walked, and I never got scared, but I turned around at a point, and I realized you and Allie were still in the cemetery with your flashlights. I realized I could not hear or see your lights. And this is Mountain Lion Death Road. So I turn around, and I come back. Well, we go back a few weeks later to do daytime shots, and I walk out there, and there's a field and a road. There is no forest. And I still have not reconciled this in my own head.
But, like, for years after that, we always joked that you
came
back
to another dimension.
Well, we always joked that you came back to the wrong dimension or whatever, because that was kind of the turning point in our ghost hunting or whatever. And after all those experiences there, that's when I was like, hey, we're doing super science. Like, I changed. Allie, like, things were just kind of different all of a sudden. And it was a total coincidence, probably, maybe.
And there's other stuff that, like, personal life changes, like, for everybody that went on after that were, like, just everything, like, flipped on its head. And so I joked for a while that... And you had I'd been in the wrong dimension.
Yeah, that it was almost like a Mandela effect thing that you'd actually like crossed over.
So I think we were driving somewhere one day and we started talking about, hey, what if
we were looking for a new place to investigate, and I was like, you were like, oh, blah blah blah, and we were kind of like spitballing like a what if sort of thing. I'm like, you should just do that as a blog, like. Write it as a story, as if it's Sarah from the other dimension, blah blah. And,
so that's what I did.
Yeah,
I wrote a story about I went to Kyle, I came back, I'm in the wrong dimension, and in this dimension there are creatures from other dimensions running around. We have to find them and send them back.
And I'm really pushy, so she finally showed me these one day, and I'm like, hey, guess what? You're doing a website now. And she's like, no, I don't think anybody should. I'm like, no. She's like, Steven says they're too long. No, this is what we're doing. And then I went through and I edited and I added to it. So I feel kind of good because I helped kind of co-write some of it.
Oh, so Jen says, so yeah, that's the Dead Spring Forest. Yeah, and I wasn't the only one who saw it, by the way. I didn't just walk down this forest. I'm not crazy. Everyone looked down this. And
yeah, I saw the path. I saw it.
It's funny because we all said, oh, that looks like it's out of Pet Sematary.
It looks like if you watch the movie Pet Sematary and you see the scene where they're like, hey, what's down that road? Because they got that weird accent. What's down that road?
Dead's better.
Don't go down that road. That road is scary.
The ground is sour.
But if you look at the way it looks like this long
path.
And
it's tunneling, like when you go down one of those really pretty roads with the trees arching over it.
I think there's some scenes in the movie where they're walking down the path and it shows the path. and then they get...
And everyone saw it, and even if you, like, when we were out there, we could not see through this forest.
Right, it looked like it went to a goddamn pet cemetery.
It looked like a thick forest, but we go back and it's all the little squat mesquite and cedar trees.
Dude, you remember my face when we went out there?
Yes.
Because I walked back there, I walked back through the gate, and I'm like, because we were looking for animal dens.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, did y'all find animal den?
No, we found an oil field.
You're not going to believe what I found back here. And where's the forest? And that's where the fiction part ends in the nonfiction part.
Yeah, that's where the
nonfiction
ends in the story, and then it's just our wacky adventures. And
yeah, it's great though.
And I'm also doing it as a sort of podcast.
Yeah, we're doing an audio drama with it, which 2 episodes are already posted up. The audio drama.
And be easy on me because I've never done this before. I'm real monotone when I talk. That's how I tried to work on my Texas accent, and I'm really trying to put more feeling into it, but I'm having a hard time with it.
One more time, with feeling.
But Allie and Brad are doing their own audio, and I want my kids are actually going to come in and do their own audio.
We're recording episode 3 probably sometime next week, which actually has our kids in it, because that story is actually about... Well, it's not spoiling it because the blog's already up.
Yeah, and my kids actually wrote most of this.
She let her kids write some of it.
Yeah, my kids wrote most of their own parts because I wanted to portray how they would react in this actual situation, and it's pretty. I think it's funny. I think the new one's funny too.
I like the ones coming up that aren't written yet that we've been.
Oh yeah.
That we've been mashing together. I can't say anything about it.
Why not?
I don't want to spoil it. It's really good. We shouldn't say much about it. There's meth heads.
There's meth heads. Because that's something we run into where we'll be trying to find a cemetery and we'll just find this circle of trailers.
So let's talk about the nonfiction account that story is going to be based off. So our favorite weekend hobby when we don't have a investigation scheduled is to just type cemetery or graveyard or haunted.
But
into
most
Google
often,
Maps,
these places are on people's
private property. And so we were driving around looking for this cemetery that had popped up on our map. And lo and behold, we're just suddenly driving through this trailer
and we
park.
go over a cattle guard, we go over another cattle guard, and then there's this circle of trailers. And then someone comes out to ask us why we're on their property.
I used to love radio, and that's where we come from too. We used to listen to the Shadow, like the golden oldie tapes and stuff like that. I love those too. So these aren't like audiobooks. These have background music, sound effects,
and it is just getting started,
characters.
so it will evolve as time
Right?
goes.
Yeah, they're a little bit dry. We're still kind of learning exactly how to do it. I mean, I used to know how to do it when I was 8 years old with my Magnavox.
Yeah. And I'm also learning the software on top of that.
Right. Sarah's actually learning how to do audio editing. But I don't have the link memorized because it's still on a free site for right now. So she doesn't have her own domain yet. So I will post up a link to that along with links to the 2 audio ones that you have released in the blog and all that good stuff, and you guys need to check it out. So it's related to NT Paranormal, but it's the fiction side of us. And the Strictly Sickly blog doesn't have any episodes out yet, but that's something that's in the works that Sarah's doing on her own. And of course, we've got some good live investigations coming up. I want to mention that
A.W. Perry is one.
Yeah, that is going to be September 19th.
Okay.
And they're doing something different this year. We're not doing the paranormal porch like we used to, where we just go up and talk to everybody, like panel style. It's just going to be our group. And they are actually letting us take groups through the house and possibly to the cemetery to do live investigations with the public. So and that will be absolutely free. So you guys will actually get to go into the house this time at night while we're with you and use the equipment and see
and it's
if
a
we
cool
can,
place.
and see if we can get any paranormal activity. And we will tell you all the stories about everything that happened in each room, in the history of the location and all that. That's another case that we talked about in the book. And I'll warn everybody straight up, they have haunted dolls there, which is
they have
cool.
haunted dolls, It's usually very warm in there is another thing I tell
Yeah.
people. And there's not a ton of space, so if that's a problem for you, probably don't do it.
And then we have the Cranberry Paranormal Expo coming up on September 3rd, or is that in October?
I don't know.
Oh, it's October 19th is when the A.W. Perry thing is. September 3rd, the last weekend of September is when the Granbury Paranormal Expo is.
And that's in the Granbury Square, like the historical section of Granbury.
And,
my hometown, woo!
And we've actually done some investigations there, too. The Hood County Jail is there.
Yeah.
So is the Yates Duke Cabin is there.
It's got a lot of history. The Opera House, the jail, everything there is very... It's also a really nice square. Lots of really cute shops and stuff.
And I'm really excited for this year because, we'll be there on the square. We're giving a paranormal investigation class, and our spot is always right there on the corner across the street from the jail, so we might post up one of us over by the jail to actually talk about our investigations.
It's also across from the food truck.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Barbecue. That's what I'm all about, paranormal barbecue. Okay, so that was our wonderful impromptu show for the day. I hope everybody had a good time. If you guys plan on doing anything stupid tonight, well, it's pretty late. If you're out in the cemetery, you haven't been listening to our podcast. So,
and my advice is to trespass. Just do it carefully.
Don't, as long as you don't get caught, it's not illegal.
And it's not our fault.
It's not. Yes, we didn't endorse it. Okay, so everybody have a good night, and we will catch you guys next Thursday. Our next episode is the I don't know if Kristen has off or not. I think next week we're doing the debate on
possession.
Yeah, on possession, which will be a moderated debate. I think that's going to be the next episode. And as soon as we figure out when we can actually get Rose in the studio to do the free readings, I'll post up a new date for that, and we'll get that going. And do we have any other cool stuff I need to talk about? Of course, we're posting up videos from YouTube into Facebook, so we're going to continue to do the live premiere videos for a lot of our old back episodes. Like, these are our old investigations back before we knew what we were doing, so they're like ancient, but they're a lot of fun to just kind of sit there, watch, and comment on with everybody. So keep an eye out for that stuff, and everybody have a good weekend.
Thanks for watching.